Welcome to On Our Way with Beryl Botman in conversation with Robert Steiner. Robert is presently the pastor of Rondebosch United Church. Welcome, Robert. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you, Beryl.
Robert, I have come to learn to know Rondebosch United Church as a visitor. I actually visited for 3 years. After a conversation with my friend Charlene, she introduced me to the congregation. After we had a conversation about what I was struggling with at the time and what I was looking for in a faith community. And she suggested I come give Rondebosch United Church a try. And I did. And
I'm glad you did.
And I visited over a period of 3 years, periodically. And at the time, I didn't attend any other faith community.
And I did invite you for coffee every time you came. But you said you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready. And I think one of the reasons I needed to find myself, determine what it is that I needed at the time, and not being drawn into the community before I'm settled within myself in terms of what I was looking for. And one of the main things that I was looking for is, I don't know what to call it, but sound theology. It's like finding a weekly expression of finding myself in the Word, in a community. And it took me quite a long time to do that, but the way in which you conducted the services, in particular the sermons, found resonance with me on the very first level, and that grew on me. So
that's wonderful to hear, of course.
I would like to have you tell me more about how you are, what your approach to your sermons are, and if maybe I can tell you what in particular it is that makes sense to me, in so far as that I left the denomination that I was born into, which was quite a difficult decision for me to make, in order to come to Rondebosch United Church.
Yeah, I brought just some pages from a book that I really enjoyed, and I've used it in some of the services, by Charlie Mackesy, on the boy, the horse, the mole, and the fox. And they're on a journey and becoming friends. And there's so much beautiful wisdom in there, and the kind of aphorisms that Charlie Mackesy uses. And in response to your first question, I brought this page here, which basically shows us the boy and the mole and the fox looking at the moon. And the subheading is be curious. Be curious. And I think that's for me a guiding kind of principle, vision for my preparation for Sunday morning. I feel that every week I'm a little bit like a child trying to find something that really excites me, and then to come on a Sunday morning and be able to share that with you as a congregation. So I think it needs to be something that really excites me, that I found it like a treasure that I found and that I'm keen to share with the congregation.
So would you say that you find the curiosity within yourself, and then related to what it is that you can share about that curiosity or explore that curiosity? Is it how do you feel the congregation, the audience impacts on your curiosity?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. So the preparation obviously happens in one's own study with the text, and curious means to be keen to find new things about the text, and that the text is alive, depending who is the one who's reading it, in what context. And obviously there is this amazing scholarship that, is now available at one's fingertip on the internet. Articles by wonderful feminist theologians that I really appreciate a lot, and liberation theologians, and more recently the whole earth spirituality, the important understanding of the impact of our earth crisis and what it means to live in a Big Bang universe. So there's so much information, and then to see through it and to be inspired by it in terms of the reading of the text and to discover new meanings that I haven't seen before. And then the next step is, of course, so, it goes in two steps. There's the recording, where I need to develop a serious script. But then Sunday morning, I always call this kind of the jazz version. And I think that's what you were talking about, is when I stand there, that to be aware of the audience and to see that what's happening there Sunday morning is something that takes me and the congregation together. We create something together. And to discern where people are and the responses. And that's the beauty, I think, of gathering in person.
Yeah. I think, yes, what you achieve is through your curiosity. You are creative with what it is that you have read and how you have read it, and you are aware of who is listening to that, and knowing that there are people you would be faced with that would have their own interpretations brought to the conversation in that sense. So I am often in awe of how new and how fresh you bring old messages that I have come accustomed to, that I've heard over the years. I wonder what does it take in particular to keep up with deeper and more true, not the truth, interpretations, and it is with what you bring.
I think, first of all, I need it, Beryl, because the traditional readings often don't really speak to me. And I don't feel moved. So I need to find people who've written about these texts, scholars and preachers. So I do a lot of cursory reading on the text and around the text, and always look out for a little new opening, which I can grab and then work with. So I'm, first of all, always the one who learns from others. And that's important to acknowledge that. Where is it coming from? From whom have I learned this? And then to share it again. And then to see that in the moment of sharing and composing, it changes again. I'll bring something of myself to it. And then obviously our community, in listening and hearing, also hears different things. And that's for me the fascinating thing on a Sunday morning. We've got such a spectrum of people. Also across class and education. And sometimes I'm worried, how do I kind of speak to everyone, Some people like a more intellectual exercise. Others really want a ministry to the heart, and how to hold this together. And I'm always surprised myself, Beryl, how different people come to me and feel that it has nourished their soul. I think there's more happening. And the fascinating thing with language is that we say something, but people hear more than we thought we're saying. Like with the text, there is meaning around it, a surplus of meaning that one can rely on. And some people would say, well, that's the work of the Holy Spirit, who comes and brings things alive and moves among us, within us. But to explain, apart from being curious, another page here that explains maybe my approach in general is you see the mole and the boy sitting together, and the mole or the boy asking, I wonder if there's a school of unlearning. And we've often talked about the unlearning. And I think, our reading of Scripture, our thinking about God is so entrenched for our formation, to break that open again and to be willing to unlearning. And I think I'm grateful to be in a congregation who's willing to do that. So I don't get a lot of resistance.
Yes, it is through how one's belief and one's faith is based on your foundations or mine. And I think the challenges that you bring with your sermon in bringing new understanding, new experience to what I thought I knew is indeed a challenge, because unlearning is not an easy task to do. And I think I wonder how it is possible, and I suppose it is possible, but that it just takes time in dismantling old patterns and but if you have done it for decades, it's not an easy task. I, for example, struggle with. I don't struggle with broadening of the image of God. I think it's broadening for me more and more in many ways. I experience this when I travel, when I am in contact with nature, in contact with other people. But what I do struggle with is naming God anything other than the male God. It's I don't know, it's intellectual. Our Father, I don't have a problem. I don't have an issue if you speak about God, our Mother. But me saying it comes very, very difficult.
Sure. And is it about emotions that you feel a stronger connection when you think of God as Father?
I don't know if it's emotion. I just think it's habit.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I can understand the feminine side of God, but I also think God, the image of God is so huge, and our minds are very limited actually to fully engage with that. But bringing this new thinking and this new engagement with God and what God is asking of us, or what God is giving us, or what we expect from God, and that is why I think it's important for us to engage on a weekly basis with the word, because it's a weekly thing. It's new, and you don't only challenge me intellectually, but what you bring is some creativity in thinking, in the way you approach the sermon.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think when it comes to images of God, to remember that none of us has seen God. We're just using metaphors. We are kind of limited in that sense, and to be aware that each metaphor is an attempt to describe something that is hard to grasp and which is not supposed to be boxed in, locked into one. But that images of God are so important, the implications. And I think sometimes that people don't really think of what kind of God are they kind of presenting at that moment, and that especially in pastoral work, that is an important dimension of what kind of God do you believe, and how does that shape that space. But I wanted to say what I find fascinating. My image of God has changed a lot, and it, for me, God is actually often more that the very thing that connects us. It's in between, moving, spirit within us, around us, among us, within us. It's the and how this God wants to be embodied in our lives. How Christ comes to others through me. And I've learned so much around the importance of embodiment in our tradition. In how God is not far away, the puppet master,
Yes.
the policeman, the judge.
That's what we grew up with.
Yeah.
That's the we fearful
Yes, fear.
of
Fear-based.
God.
Fear-based religion,
Yeah.
So much,
Yes.
And to shift, to move. And when we look at Jesus' way of speaking about God and him inviting us into that kind of intimate, loving relationship where there's nothing to fear,
In terms of the creativity that you bring, you present, you coming here to talk to me about how you what your approach is to making a sermon and presenting a sermon, and you bring those creative images and words along, and so you also bring the arts. You do music, you integrate your sermons with music and with sculptures, images of sculptures, and with paintings and all kinds of different artworks, which for me is very helpful in understanding or making sense of what you are trying to do. How do you manage all of that, bringing so many imagery and sound to what you do?
Yeah. Well, how do I do it? First of all, I do it because I'm passionate about it. And I do think that artists have a lot to say. Music and, and painting, for example, and sculpture, in how artists sometimes even comment on a biblical story and just open it up in a whole new way, which is very moving. And so it's just adding another voice to the conversation on the text and discovering the text through the eyes of the artist. And again, I'm glad I don't have to go to a library, or museum to find those artworks. That again, on the web, so much is available, and one is searching and learning through podcasts like yours on artists. One keeps kind of exploring and then trying to make connections. But I realized also in the online service, I needed something beside myself, otherwise an empty screen. And I think that's how I really started exploring more the arts as one way of being in conversation, and now including it in the service. And what we should not forget is, of course, and I wish we would have more of that, is dance. And we had occasionally a dance in the service, but how moving that is, and what dances bring to the story in terms of question of embodiment. So I think it's wonderful to be part of such rich texture, and to allow for all of that intertextuality. But it takes time, Beryl. So I think in terms of the weekly preparation, I'm sure I spend 20 hours, until I've finished the script. And then on a Saturday, again, distilling. So you have like half an hour of a script, and then for the Sunday morning, you can't bring all of that. It's kind of more the jazz version, where I distill and say, well, it's like when you wrote your doctorate, when the supervisor says, okay, you're on the track if you can say it in one sentence, what it's about. And I keep reminding myself, well, what is it that I really want to say? And bring it down to a sentence or two. What is it that I really need and want to share on a Sunday morning? So it takes time. So it's a great blessing to have that time to do research and prepare. But sometimes it's also hard because it's a weekly deadline. You kind of got to produce weekly. And sometimes I wish I would have another week, but I don't.
Yes, and then that you must move on to the next.
Yes.
To the next, you can't ponder. We do ponder some of the time in the sermon discussion groups about that, and in those groups we find how different things mean to each and every one. And I think for me, one of the important things without not just thinking about the sermons, but trying to apply the sermon to how you think this impacts on your life. How am I supposed to live differently after today's sermon? So every single sermon, every single Sunday is challenging me to live differently, and not just differently, but living anew. And it's not, I don't find it's not easy. It's not everyone who thinks that one needs new to renew. But I think in your approach, you bring us to that point. So in all of this, the sermons, I think, is the foundation of your interaction with us as the members and the congregation that's before you. But then it develops into something deeper and more personal when those ideas and the thinking and the interrogation of what you bring to us plays out into our personal relationships, and where you are called upon to go into in a more individual kind of pastoral mode, especially when people are experiencing personal crises. And so how is that different to you, and in which ways are they the same?
Yeah. I think I feel very fortunate to have that kind of practical work as part of my ministry. So time to reflect, and then to bring this into those more intimate spaces at home visits. And sometimes also to be able to draw on certain texts that I've worked on for a particular conversation and situation. Might be in preparation of a funeral or of a wedding or of a baptism. But I'm also fortunate that the congregation gives me the freedom to choose where I want to invest myself in terms of time and energy. So apart from pastoral visits, that I'm fortunate to be, for 12 years I've been at Portsmouth Prison, at Maximum Prison. That came to an end during the pandemic, and still thinking if I want to go back there. So that's been important, to start a music group there and to kind of bring Sunday's text into that space, and again see how people respond. And then there is the U-turn.
Just to speak about your work in prison, there's another of the aspects that drew me to, because at that time you were in a pastoral relationship with, I forget his name now, who was in prison and would give us feedback on how he was doing, and then later he was released and he became part. That for me is an amazing testament to what it is that we can do with one another, and then with the smiling one that is part of our congregation and comes.
Yes.
And we are asked to support what they do. Will you just, for the sake of the audience, say something more about the smiley one, and maybe more about that?
So one of the change agents is Franklin, who works for Karina, and he was one of our first students back then at Portsmouth, when we had our Bible study, life skills and drama and conversations. And I still meet people in Cape Town who call me across the street, "Hey, Pastor, and remember me?" And then they say Portsmouth Prison. They were part of this conversation, or the guitar ministry, and it's very moving. And some of them managed, to reintegrate. And I realized at some stage that the other people who's doing it much better than I do, like Smiling One, they've got a profound program that really works. And I realized that maybe my role from being in prison should change to more supporting organizations that are going there and have a really thought through program. This is how our partnership with Smiling On came about. And so it's always important for me to actually have been in those places, to know what's needed, to have stayed there long enough now to really appreciate what they're doing. And that we need more of that kind of work, especially, from our Christian perspective and a moral vision, which believes not in retribution, but restoration, and Jesus, calling us to visit those in prison. So it's wonderful to see also as a congregation, Beryl, that instead of doing it all ourselves, to partner with those who are doing good work and to support them and encourage them.
You were going to say something about U-Turn as
Yeah,
well.
so at the moment I'm at the shelter at U-Turn Powerhouse once a week. I'm part of their integration program where they take people who live on the street every day and they take them through classes, give them food, encourage them to move forward, maybe to stage 2 where they look at addiction and receive help, and then stage 3 accommodation, stage 4 work, employment. And I go there once a week and just working with those who part of the program and teach them guitars and learning a little bit more about their lives, making music together and empowering them to learn an instrument. It's always moving to see that many of them never thought they could play an instrument. And I know you're also learning at the moment with us.
Got me into that as well, yes. And now how challenging that is, but how rewarding it is to be able to do that. But finding how it's not just about when you look at somebody playing, strumming, and it looks also easy.
Right.
But until you find it, and that is how it is with life, I think. Everything that you might see and what you might hear might look simple.
To think of it as a Christian ministry.
Yes, it's
yes. Which is so refreshing that no one's saying, but what does this have to do with the gospel?
And they do ask that people that don't see the gospel in broad terms, in terms of everyday smallest thing.
Exactly.
And the biggest thing.
And for people to see, wow, I can do this. Yes. And the pride and joy. And I think that's an important aspect of this whole reintegration program, that you have someone who believes in you, who truly sees you and believes that you can do this. And I think we sometimes forget we're so privileged with so many opportunities that others don't have. And a small little thing like teaching guitar make a difference. Huge impact, hey? Yeah. And I mean, pastoral work also takes me to Red Cross Children's Hospital. I work there, part of a pastoral team, and I'm in the burn unit. And there again, it's a very different space. People that sometimes I've not known before, mothers with their children who suffered severe burns, and all the issues around that are very complex. When a child is burned because of negligence, maybe for a moment, feelings of guilt and shame from the mother's side, and then also to see how wonderful it is that our skin can heal in marvelous ways over a few weeks, and to celebrate with them when they can finally go out. But some mothers also experience that their children don't make it, a serious infection, and they pass away. And so when I go in there, I usually focus on 1, 2, 3 mothers, and I walk with them and journey with them. And that's again a very different space where the question of God is very imminent, from why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Is God punishing me? To the question, okay, where is God in all of this? Is he against me or for me? And then it's often just listening to their story, and also again opening up their understanding of God. And empowering them to discover a God who's really with them, even suffering with them in their pain.
Yeah. So in all of this that you are doing, you are giving so much of yourself, and you are involved in it's not only intellectual work that you are doing, it's spiritual work that you are doing, but it's also daily walking with community, and mostly in spaces of pain and suffering, but also in spaces of joy and happiness and love. But in all of these different ways in which you express your service, how do you take care of Robert?
You should ask Tina that question if you want an honest answer. But I wanted to say, first of all, is a kind of bridge, the other one that I wanted to show you about ministry. And I think it also plays into what do we need for ourselves, to be refreshed and renewed. There are the fox and the mole and the boy walking together, and it says, I think everyone is just trying to get home, said the mole, going home. And I think, home can mean so many different things if you think of all the different pastoral spaces I mentioned. That ultimately we all want to get home. And when we get home, after a day of work, we also want to feel at home. And what does it take in order for one to feel at home? I think, I do enjoy making music. Sometimes in the evening in my studio to work through something that I've experienced, to put it into words and then to put it to music. I've also kind of got into art, abstract art. I've got a little desk in my room where I spend some time. It's abstract. I don't have to think. I can just allow things to happen and see what emerges. So I need that to relax. I've still taking singing lessons once a week. Classical training for 10 years now, and that's also like a counseling session for me. With a lot of breathing, you suddenly realize that it's also refreshing. You arrive tired, but you are renewed. Long walks with Tina and our dogs help me to be refreshed but I think the most important thing that I've learned in the community is, and that's also captured in just the final picture, is, I've been brought up to be very self-sufficient and not make myself vulnerable. And I'm quite a perfectionist. And in that lovely drawing, the boy asks the horse, what's the bravest thing you ever said? Asked the boy. Help, said the horse. So learning to say, I need help, I think hasn't been so easy. Usually when things get tough, I withdraw and I've tried to work through it myself. And I've learned to rely on others and to acknowledge that I need help. I can't do everything. And I think in a congregation, you discover all these people who want to support you, want to be with you, want to know how you are. And that's not a one way, I'm just asking how are you, but that people want to make sure that I'm also fine and to accept it. And that they want to help and to receive. This is the whole thing about giving and receiving. It's so easy to give because you feel strong, generous, in control. But to acknowledge that I need to receive something is to acknowledge that, I need others in my life. And what I've learned is in receiving, you're actually affirming someone and telling them, you have something that's important to me. So I think learning to say help has been important in terms of staying sane.
I'm glad that you started out with Tina. And I think it's the closest person and the one who knows when you need help and who cares about what it is that you need help with. And her being there makes all the difference in that, and you to one another. This notion of being able to ask for help has become very real for me in my mourning period, where I was similar to you, very self-sufficient. But when I was weak and I had to ask for help, I was taken to that space, and without that, I might not have survived. So thank you, Robert, for sharing your thoughts and your even dreams and your participation and involvement in not only on a one-to-many activity, but one-to-one as well. Thank you for sharing this couch.
Thank you for inviting me to this conversation, Beryl, and I'm glad that you chose RUC and that you're journeying with us. Thank you.
Thank you for joining On Our Way with Beryl Potman in conversation with Robert Steiner. Walk tall, tell it all. You've been listening to On Our Way with Beryl Potman. You can purchase my books online on Amazon, Take-A-Lot, and at bookstores like Exclusive Books, Bargain Books, independent bookstores, and Barnes & Noble internationally. To connect with me, please follow me on Facebook to learn more about my book launches and talks. You can write to me at beryl.botman60@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.